talk to some of the women's groups in the church, because I don't really think the word gets out about what we're doing in Tanzania, at least in regard to this program, and forums are kind of hard to get on. We don't have one anymore here, right? Yes, unfortunately. So we decided, well, we're going to start going around and talk to the women's group just to make them aware of kind of what we're doing. Now, we're called Iringa Hope, and we were incorporated, started as a task force, and then incorporated as a nonprofit, and we work to develop microfinance. The type of microfinance in Tanzania is called the SACCOS. It stands for Saving and Credit Cooperative Society. And that's their particular unique brand of how you do microfinance. And this is just a typical sort. Most of these SACCOs have a little mud brick. By the way, it's hard to tell it's mud brick because they actually painted this one. Most aren't painted, but it's just mud. Most of these are mud brick little offices that they're run out of. Well, first Tanzania, you hear about all the time, but just to remind you, right here's Tanzania, right on the equator. That's where we're talking. And if we look a little at the country, Tanzania has 42 million people. About 80% are rural farmers. The average income is around $1,500 for the country as a whole, but most of the money in Tanzania we find up here along the border where you have the Serengeti, Mount Kilimanjaro, Lake Victoria, a lot of tourists, coffee farms, tea farms, so there's some money up there. Or you find it out here along the coast where you have some fishing, Zanzibar, spices, things of that nature. We're talking Iringa, which is here in the middle of the country. Iringa is pretty poor. Average income in Iringa is about $300 a year, which makes it the poorest place on earth. It's basically everybody's 90% are small-scale subsistence farmers. That's really what there is. There's one major town, which is Iringa, which is where many activity does, but we're really more in the rural areas. Around Iringa, there's about 1.5 million people that live in this region in little villages. So that's really what we're talking about. This, by the way, is a town of Iringa. Sandy and I climbed up on a rock and took some pictures. So here's the town of Iringa. It's nestled up on a plateau. This is the University of Tumaini. And what brought us to it, of course, is we have a companion congregation in Iringa. The Hemi is our congregation, which is outside of the city. It's a small rural village. We also had so we started going there, and we got a connection with the University, Tumaini, which has been built by the St. Paul Synod. And we helped with a number of things at Tumaini. 2005, my last sabbatical, spent the time Sandy and I teaching at Tumaini, and I was helping start a math program. She was teaching English. So we were working at the university, and we were also volunteering in a number of other activities. The church has started an orphanage. We did some work at the orphanage. They have a preschool program. And one of the programs is an HIV/AIDS program out in the rural villages because AIDS is a big problem. And so Sandy and I were out in AIDS when we met, working on AIDS when we met Sarah. Now we were in a village called Amagi. It's another little rural village. You drive down a little mud track to get to Amagi, about an hour, and you're back in Amagi. And we were back there that day, happened to be working on educating and training some of the teachers who would then work with the students. And while we were there, this woman, who I call Sarah because frankly I can't pronounce her name, Sarah came walking into Amagi and she wanted to meet the Wazungus. Wazungus are white people. You see, she knew that the Wazungus funded the project. Now, we weren't the funders, but all Wazungus are the same, because you get out there and there's you, one Wazungu, and everybody else. That was there. So she wanted to talk to the Wazungus. And so we met with Sarah, and she got up and she told us, well, last year her husband had died of AIDS. And then shortly after that, her oldest boy died. And then shortly after that, her husband's relatives came and took everything. They took her pots, her pans, her seed, her everything, which is, in Tanzania, the tradition is the man's family owns everything. And they could take everyone, but they didn't want her or her children, they just wanted everything. So at that point, Sarah could have been a prostitute, which is what none of them do. She could have been a beggar. She could have just wandered around. And she and her child probably wanted them dead in a year or so, because that's what happens, unless you have relatives, and she had no relatives. So but she went into this AIDS project, and they lent her $200. That's all it took for Sarah, $200. With that, she bought some sunflower seeds. She bought a few pots and pans. She went home. Her 2 neighbors helped her raise a crop. She paid her loan back, and now she'd gotten another loan. This is her new crop. She was very proud. She's supporting herself now, but she couldn't have done it without the loan. And she'd come in town then to tell me the story and thank me. It wasn't my money, but also to ask, would you please go to the next village where my sister has a problem that her husband's died, and there's no money in that village. Well, Sandy and I went back to Iringa, and we took what money we had, emptied our account, a couple $1,000, that's all we had, but a couple $1,000 in to these people is huge. We took our couple $1,000 and we went back the next day and we started microfinance in the next village. Because what do you do? I mean, all these people many of them want is a little bit of resource to get their life going. And there's nothing there. Well, we started working with DIRA. DIRA is a Diocese of Iringa. That is who our church partners with. And in most villages, the only one with an education is a pastor. So generally the pastor kind of organizes things. And if you talk to the pastor, you can find out who are the leaders and what's going on in the village. And so we started working with DIRA then to start microfinance in different villages. And we partnered with them in 2007. We formed Task Force Iringa Hope. And the way that came about was Pastor Reverend Paul Harris that year was working in another village called Nyanzwa, that's his sister congregation. And Tanzania had just issued some regulations that allowed you to form SACCOs. Up till then, you see in Tanzania, Tanzania is a relatively young country. They didn't really have their first full elections till 1995. And so things are just kind of developing and evolving, and banking's very backwards there. And so until 2007, you couldn't start anything like this in Tanzania because there was no law for it. All you could do would be go to the central bank, who wouldn't lend you any money anyway. So in 2007, you finally can. Paul Harris is down in Nyanzwa, and he's forming the SACCOs. And so we connected with Paul, and when he came back, we formed the Task Force Iringa Hope. And our goal, together with DIRA, was to try to get microfinance in all the villages where there are these pastors that would help us organize. There's 73 of them. And so we started work, and we were trying to get support here to partner and develop and build some understanding and leadership. Here, by the way, is a field out near Ihemi. I was walking by there when I was out visiting, and you could see the field had been planted. You could see someone working. Everything else was planted. I asked Dorcas Kimavala, who was a pastor at the time, I asked, Dorcas, what's up with that field? Well, he said, I forget, they need $10 or $15 for seed. It won't be planted this year. There's no cash. And this is part of the problem, you see, is there's just nothing to be done. So those people won't have much income. Well, by 2 years after we formed the task force in 2009, we had 10 SACCOs. This, by the way, is a meeting of the members of the SACCOs down in Nyanzwa. You just, outside, big tree, you just all pull up a bench. Nothing fancy. We are not talking about putting money in boardrooms or chairs or furniture. You go out and sit under the tree. That's what you do. 10 SACCOs, over 95% repayment. It's hard to tell exactly how much repayment is because record keeping of these people is poor. They're not used to writing. And so you go out and you try to see the records, and it's hard to tell exactly. That is one of the difficulties. Most people there in a village have gone to 5th or 6th grade, and they don't have any paper or pencil. You walk through the whole village and not find paper and pencil, so they're not used to writing and keeping records, or it's all verbal sort of thing. So when you introduce these things, part of the training you do is to try to train them to keep a record, and try to train them to, they know how to do arithmetic, but they're not used to writing it down. So it's trying to get them to do that. So records are poor as a result, but almost every loan gets repaid. That's the point. I can't tell you 99.9%, but almost all of them do. When you talk to people, I went around and I did a survey of people, their incomes are doubling and tripling. Now that still doesn't make for much. If you start with 200 and you double your income, you got 400. just for this country, the average income's 1,400, 1,500, and where we are, it's 200. So we're still not. We're helping them. Things are getting better, but I just want to put it in perspective. We're not talking about making England rich here. Everywhere I went in in Iringa, if they found out I had something to do with Sacos, the whole village would gather. They all wanted to know about it. Can we get one? How do we get one? You're just flooded with people who were really interested because finally they can get some resource to do something. Well, what is a Sacos? Just a little by the side. It's a local microfinance bank. It's all elected from the village, so everyone participates. They buy a share. You want to be a member of Saco, you have to pay $5. That's a small fortune to these people. You have to pay $5. You're a member. Now you vote, you participate. We let everybody come. This is not just for Christians, it's for anybody in the village. And there are Muslims, Christians, traditionalists, Catholics, Episcopalians. Everybody who's in the village can join. You can only borrow money to make money. You can't borrow money for a wedding or furniture. So you borrow money to make money. Income-only projects, and every loan is guaranteed by 3. So I lend to you, you have to have 2 friends. That's how you get such high repayment, because your friends are liable if you don't pay, and they want to make sure you pay.
That's a good idea.
So groups of 3, typically $150 to $300. Most are for seed fertilizer for a crop. I remember one woman borrowed a couple $100 for a sewing machine. She started a little tailoring business. And another one down in Amagi borrowed a couple $100 to get some pots and pans and went into the baking business. So there are some small businesses as well, but most of these are farmers, for the most part. Charge 2% per month. That may sound like a lot, but in Tanzania, if you could get a loan, right now I just checked, the central bank is 54% is what they lend to other banks, which means you would pay 70%. If you could get one, which you can't get. So this is actually part cheap, and even at 2% a month, frankly, these Sacos have a hard time breaking even. Because you're only lending it for 6 to 9 months. Inflation runs 10% in Tanzania, 9 or 10%, so you have to make 10% at the end of the day, and you have expenses, so this is roughly break even for a Sacos, is 2% a month. But if you can't get a loan from a Sacos, these people can't get a loan. There's just nobody. There's not. You can't even get a scalper to lend you a few dollars for. There's nothing. And you might think, well, $5. What's $5? But there's people who can't plant their crop because they don't have $5 to buy seed, and there won't be $5 in the whole village. It just won't be. It's gone. Well, here's down at Nyanzwa, one of the Sacos. This happens to be the building that's in. Again, it's one of the few painted ones. This is mud. That's the only thing that's going to survive a rain. The rest of this building's mud down there. But still, here are the elected officials of Nyanzwa. I met with them under a cicada tree. Here are some of the key officials. They all have a little safe, because they don't keep much cash, but you can't let any cash sit around. There's no doors or windows or locks in these huts, so if you have any cash, you got to put it somewhere. So we'll buy them a little safe. They'll have a little safe. This widow I was talking to, her income more than doubled, but she told me before I had a little bit, now I have much. She made $600. I'm sorry. I shouldn't, but you need these people. And with the $600, she sent her 2 kids to school, and they now get to eat meat twice a month. Before they didn't get meat. It is just really, you go and you visit these people, and it just is amazing what a few $100 does. Just amazing. At Nyanzwa, we brought some people that studied. Here's another field. This is an onion field. The 2 ladies were working, and they gotten all the other fields ready. They got this field ready, went to town. Price of onion seeds up a little bit. They couldn't buy enough seed. How much they need? $5. At $5. So they're going to get half the crop because they don't have $5. Well, I gave them $5. And this is unreal. $5. Here's a bunch of the members. We started one at Ahesa, our church did. 2008. We sent them the seed funding. Now, to start a SACOS, you need at least $6,500. You'd prefer to have more. You'd prefer to have 10 or 12 or 15, but you need at least $6,500 to start one. If you get all the people in the village to buy a membership, you might get 200. So where do you get the rest from? Well, we try to raise it and send it to them. That's where you get the rest of the money from. Is donations, because otherwise there's just no source for the money. So we sent seed funding. I think we wound up sending 14,000 to EHSA. Really, by the way, for these to truly break even, they need about 15,000. That's where the income and the expenses and everything really breaks even. It's about 15,000. I took some of the people from Ahemi down to Neonsweather to look, and we trained some more. This is Pastor Kimbavala. He's no longer at Ahemi, but he was a pastor at the time. His wife just died, by the way. Very nicely, very nicely. The day that it started, I wasn't at Ahemi the day it started, but he sent me a text. You know, they may not have electricity, they may not have water, but they have cell phones. And there may only be one cell phone in the village, by the way, but they all use it. And they all send text messages because they're cheap. They can send a text message for a penny or two. So I'm sitting in my office in Lakeville and get this message. This is one of the greatest days of my life. There is great hope here at Ahemi. And then a little later on, he said, I am humbled by this great gift to us all. That is really as much as anything what this does. It brings them some hope. You know, there's hope that we can do something, we can improve, we can double our income, we can send our kids to school. If there's not a SACOS or something, there's just no hope. You know, we go out and we do have projects to train them how to grow things. And then what do we find? Well, they can't buy the seed. So what good's it trading? Or they can't buy the fertilizer. So what good's it trading? Well, not much, because they can't do it anyway. There's no money. Here, EHSA, by the way, at EHSA we had donated a flour mill, and so that was in this building. They moved it out, and that building's now their SACOS. And the people were just having a little celebration because SACOS, most of the members who get loans are women. Not everybody, but most households are like 70% are headed by women. What happens to the men? Well, see, we're just a generation away from the old tribal ways in Tanzania. We're very, you know, 1995 they start electing, and they're forced into villages. Up till then, you're just kind of wandering around. And the woman stays behind and grows crops and does things. The man, he goes off to war and killing animals. And so most of these men grew up with their dads telling them, you know, you're a man, you go out, you fight, you do animals. So they have a family and they go off. Well, there's no war to fight. They've been peaceful now for quite a while. And all the animals are gone. It's just the game preserves and nothing else. And the men go out and they look for a job or to fight or something. They usually wind up alcoholics. And so that's why you have so many households headed by women, is because the men they're not educated, so they don't really know much else. They haven't really, the younger kids are getting trained and educated. So the next generation will probably be different, but right now, the men think they go off and do something. They go off, there's nothing to do, they get drunk, because they can get drunk on 10 cents a day. So that's why you see so many households headed by women. The women are really holding the community together. About 70% of the people in Osaka is a woman. Most of the houses are there. Here they're outside the building. This is our committee at EHSA. As soon as they started, first round, they gave 70 loans, 23 people waiting. Basically, everybody in a village will sooner or later join, but they don't want to tie up their $5 till they can get a loan. So what you see happen is there's a little waiting list, and then as you get more money to make more loans, there's still a little waiting list, because as people see they can get a loan, then more join. That's kind of the algorithm, because you don't want to tie up your $5. So 70 or 23, one woman came up and told me, this is more than a loan. This has brought us hope for our children. That's why the name Iringa Hope. It's hope for the Iringa area, the villagers there. Because if you can get a loan, you can double your income. I mean, you can send your kids to school. I said, you can have meat maybe twice a month. You maybe buy a dress this year. You might be able to take a bus ride to see your sister, maybe this year once. That's great hope, because it's a big change for what they've had. The program keeps growing. They report 100%. I was there and looked over the books as far as I could tell. Hard to tell. As far as I could tell, they got all their money back. Their income's double, triple. It's hard to say. It's just much, much more. You know, when you start with 200, I suppose, and you go to 800, it still doesn't sound like a lot to us, but if you've been living on 200, that's a fortune. You're rich. You have much. They have a waiting list now, last I checked, of 40 borrowers. So you see, as you get more loans, more people come. How big's a village? Well, a village could potentially have a couple hundred members. Typically, most of the villages could have as many as about 200 members. So it grows. Now, we felt the program, we were outgrowing working with DIRA, with the diocese. So we needed more structure, more people to go out and do training. We just needed more people there. And so we went to Tumaini. And Tumaini, we started working with them in 2009, saying, let's form a microfinance institute so we can get some faculty and students and get more people out to the villages to do training and work and so forth. And we started looking for some partners. So in late 2009, actually 2010, we signed a deal where now we have an institute for microfinance we support. The institute has Thrivent Financial, is a partner in the institute. Thrivent gives a little money, not much, but that wasn't really what we were asking for. They give a lot of help in connections to other organizations. They have people on the ground that show up at the university several times a year, 6 or 7 times a year, and work with them to try to locate villages and understand how we can get the villagers busy and working and so forth. They've been a great assistance. We're very pleased with Thrivent as a partner, and they do help support the educational programs. So this institute is directed by Tumaini, the university, by ourselves here at Iringa Hope, and by Thrivent. And the 3 of us then direct the activities of what the institute does. A friend of mine is a director, Dr. Enoch Ugulumo. Enoch is an excellent gentleman. He has 12 years of experience. He run other microfinance programs. Really a committed guy. He's just really, Enoch is just fantastic. And then we have different people who work in the field, but the main one who does most of the work, Inuweni Lago. Inuweni is just one of those people. She's just committed. She's going to change the world for these women out in the villages. And you talk to Inuweni, you can just feel the excitement. She is really good. She's an economics major, did some accounting, and she's out in the field for us. We have other people, but these are the 2 main ones working with us. We went out and we looked around and we did an audit first thing of all the SACOs that are in DIRA. There's 14 of them. And these are just, we don't want to look at the details. These are the names where they are: Kibalama, Nyanzwa, Ehesa, and so forth. But of these 14, there's about $80,000 that they land back and forth now between the 14. So you can see the average is running about 6,000 capital, is what the average is. They have about 650 members. It's hard to tell because members, join and change a little, but about 650. And each of these members represent a family of 4 or 5. So we're talking roughly 3,000 people are currently being served by this. And they pretty much get 100% repayment, $150 to $300 loan, like I said. So we feel good we've made progress, but there's 73 villages. This is only 14. Now, what do we do? Well, here's a typical meeting. It's a mud brick building going up and no roof, but you just kind of meet out there and talk with the local villagers. What's going on is Ituani is training the leaders for new SACOs, explaining to them bookkeeping and accounting, and we're not talking fancy accounting, we're talking how do you figure 2% a month. That's what we're talking. So nothing fancy. I mean, these are intelligent people, but there's just no education or opportunity to use what they learn, and so you have to keep reminding them of what you do, just like you would anyone. So that's what's going on here. What we do is we go out and we educate our leaders. Talk to the pastor helps say these people are probably the best candidates and they're leaders in our community, and so you train them. Work with the core leaders, and then you start enlisting members. We want 40 members before we're going to consider them, at least 40 members. And that means they have to pony up to $5 before you start. And then we start, so that's the first capital base, is from them. And then we try to raise additional capital. Our goal is to do 8 every year. our goal, which is hard to raise. I mean, think of it, we have to raise 60 or 70,000 every year. That's our goal. That's my job. I'm a failure at my job, by the way, but that's my job. Good thing they can't fire me, but that's a job. And then, of course, once it starts, you can't walk away. You have to keep going back and train them and guide them and audit their books. And so we try to make 2 or 3 visits, 2 or 3 training. Right now, we're organizing a training session at Tumaini, and so we will bring all the leaders of the SACOs to the university for 3 days and give them a 3-day training session. That costs about $2,000 to $3,000 every time you do it. And we try to do it twice a year, just because part of this too is to develop a culture of saving and investing and understanding when you're making money. I mean, because they're not used to that. They've never had a savings account, never had access to a bank, never had access to a checking, never had none of it. All of these are new ideas to the villages, and so trying to introduce them to that so they can improve their lives is part of the training. As I said, we want to get all 73 villages. We want a microfinance bank, and as it develops, we want to get into purchasing and marketing the crops. We don't want to, and what I mean by that is we want this to be a co-op. So if a farmer wants seed, 50 farmers want seed, what do they do now? They go to town, they each try to buy a bag of seed, which means they pay 3 times as much as anybody else for 1 bag of seed, if they can get it. Often they can't get it. What we want is we want the local SACOs to say, I need 50 bags of seed, and buy 50 bags at once, so they get a better price and make sure they get the seed. That's what I mean by purchasing. We don't want to tell them what to do. We just want to make sure they can get it at a reasonable price, and we think we can do that if we can get them working together like a normal co-op. And so long term, we want to introduce these. Right now, we're at the finance and just building stage. But if you think, average loan per person, $50. $200 for a family, $6,500 to start SACOs for a village. It is an extremely cheap investment you make, really. And what you do is you really bring hope to people's lives. You just at the very least, I can remember walking in a village, and I met a woman walking, and she was just, you could just tell she was beat out. And Kim Bavala was with me, and he called to her and he said, "We're here to talk about SACOs." You could just see, just to change that. Oh boy, it was just, what a change, just to give someone the hope that they can maybe get some resources to do something. Right? We take that for granted. We just do. This is a typical village. This is where you meet the people. Mud brick house, you notice there's not a piece of metal or machinery in the place. There's not a power line. This is where you're working. There's just a mud brick house, little thatched roof, somebody walking around, little field here and there. I like this quote. It says, when you do it to one of the least of these, I'm not sure these are the least of these. These people are really nice people, but they certainly are the people at the bottom of the pyramid. And Iringa Hope, what we want to do is bring hope to the bottom of the pyramid. That is our goal. We want to hit all 73. Well, anything I can tell you that I didn't already tell you? Maybe I already told you more than you wanted to know.
No, I think it's fantastic.
Do they,